Sometimes increasing your price will increase your sales because people think that you do better work or your product is better. Warby Parker, the eyeglass company, it was founded by MBA students who were at Wharton Business School. And they had one of their professors as their advisor, and they brought their whole plan and everything to their professor and said, everything's perfect except one thing. Your glasses are too cheap. They're $45. No one will believe that $45 glasses are actually good quality, so double your price. The sales really skyrocketed after they changed it to doubling their eyeglasses price.
That was our free tip. You should double your prices so your sales up.
I've been basically mocking LinkedIn influencers and all the egomaniacs on LinkedIn that love to take pictures in front of their Lamborghinis and stuff. And that type of content has done really well. I mean, I've almost done 30,000 impressions per post for 9 months. So for 2026, I would say, don't feel the need to be a clown like I do. In order for you to successfully build your brand, you only have to be known for a couple things that you do better than anyone else. And just that consistency over time. You're not boring the audience. You may be boring yourself because you think about these things every moment of your life, but the rest of us out there in LinkedIn land, this is new to us. So just teach us about that one thing and you'll do fantastic.
The biggest tip was just your lowest package, just call it your minimum package.
I keep thinking about Ulysses, which is that Greek mythology fable. They're in a ship, they could hear the sirens singing, and if they go towards the voice, they drown, but they just need to be very strong and not go towards the voice. And I think of us as we are that tool that helps you not go towards the voice. So when you're negotiating, for example, with recruiters or in a business deal, you can't help but you want to share numbers and you want to share your market data because we're so used to this way of negotiating, and there's the social pressure and there's the common knowledge that is actually misconceptions. As I think of us as holding Ulysses back from following the seductive voice of the negotiation sirens so that they don't drown and not make much money in their deals.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Gentle Power, our podcast when we talk about negotiation, principles, topics. We invite guests who range from our friends to world-class negotiators, lawyers, product managers, experts, CEOs, everything.
It's a pretty
It's a
wide net
yes,
that we cast.
But the thread is power negotiations. We always talk about power negotiations. Generally trying to be helpful to our audience with tips and hot takes and specific examples. So today we have Morgan Snyder. We met Morgan on LinkedIn, as one does when you spend a lot of time on LinkedIn.
Just casually strolling LinkedIn one day with Morgan, and we all ran into each other.
Whenever I go to my LinkedIn feed, there's a lot of happy to announce I just raised $50 million or whatever, or a lot of AI articles, and it's kind of surreal what is happening on LinkedIn. Maybe that's just my feed. It's either wild announcements of success, which I'm very happy for my connections for, or AI sort of blabbering.
Yeah.
Morgan, I'll turn it over to you to share a bit about what you do and where do power and negotiations come into your professional life.
You can help guide me along, but I'm sure we'll find some threads there. I work with CEOs and other C-suite leaders on their brand strategy, content architecture, and basically helping them become the leading voices in their space. And so a lot of the folks that I work with are in the tech sector, and their company is starting to grow, and so they need someone to come in and kind of turn on the content engine across short form and long form. I think when I hear you say power and some of the dynamics that happen between people and the work that I'm doing, a lot of it centers around the creative process and how we get ideas out there, how we create things, how we struggle together through our conversations and communications and in producing things. So I would say that's probably where it comes up the most.
Great. Can you tell us a bit more about that? So where do you see sort of the power in that? And I'm also curious, I think our audience will be very curious, how are you dancing with AI in this content work that you do?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've been working with leaders on the most in the last few years of me running my business has been like, what do I say? Who am I talking to? How do I say these things to people? And just getting them acclimated to the fact that they are leading a movement with their company, and they have to be ready and prepared to speak and to write and to create things about what they're doing. And so that's really, I guess, the crux of it for me is kind of being a creative partner, but also being somewhat of a counselor or a friend with them and saying like, let's work through these things. Let's discuss this and get to the bottom as to like why you're feeling certain ways about content pieces and things like that. On the AI side, I mean, obviously an incredible tool, whether you're using Claude or Gemini or Grok, whatever LLM you're using, great for structuring ideas and coming up with nuggets from transcripts and different moments that might be important for creating. But ultimately for me, I have all of that. I have a process and workflow for working with AI, but at the end of the day, it still needs a human touch. I feel like it still needs me to do some of the shaping and the curating of the content, and not just for a ghostwriter or consultant like I am, but for any marketing team out there, I think that it still needs some of the soul of the people inside of the company, and first and foremost the CEO, but then everyone else who's on those teams in order to shape the content and what gets created.
Cool. When you reach out to these CEOs or C-suite, or is it the other way around? I'm curious how you find your clients and what those conversations look like, because there's so much overlap between sales and negotiations. And we have a lot of people who are in sales or have their own business who listen to our podcast. So would love to hear a bit more about your process and how you go about it.
Yeah, I would say the last about, I would say, year, a lot of people have been coming from my newsletter. And I have that on Substack. I also produce some short audio things that get put out on Spotify and Apple. And then I also kind of cross-pollinate that to LinkedIn as well. And this is something that I've seen for my own content, but for all my clients as well. There's only so much context and so much that you can put inside of these little windows in the social media feed. Plus they're getting distracted by notifications and spammers and everything else. And so when they're in that feed, it's hard to really process big ideas or, let's say something that a CEO wants to say. And so it's kind of finding that sweet spot of pulling them into the long form content so that they can see how clients approach ideas and how I think about things. And from there, seeing a lot of conversations happen. That's not to say that someone will see a piece of my content and go, oh, that resonated, and I got to send a DM to Morgan. But a lot of the messages that I get, especially in the last few months, have been, I've read a couple of your newsletters, and I kind of go above and beyond on the sarcasm and the humor bits, and I will like create images of me and Jeff Bezos and Sydney Sweeney hanging out, for example, and they're like, "Hey, are you the guy that hangs out with Sydney Sweeney on LinkedIn?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, you caught me." She and I are always like hanging out and stuff. But I think those newsletters have really helped people see that yes, I'm a great strategic mind, but I'm also a real person who has this personality, and I think people enjoy that. And so, to your question of like, where am I finding people, that the long form content is what's really helping me identify, okay, these are the people that I want to work with. And they're also the ones who have spent the most time with me, which is something that I try to help all of my clients understand, is you have to increase your surface area, so to speak. Short form is one of those pieces, but long form has to be a part of the content strategy and architecture, because if they're not able to go down the rabbit hole, so to speak, and find things about you and discover you in these different ways, it's hard to make a decision just on a few LinkedIn posts. So
this is so fascinating, but because it sounds like you're using some psychological concepts. The first thing that comes to mind is like almost sunk cost fallacy, where people are investing time into your content. There's some concept where I've put so much time into this guy, I must like him, and that, right? Like I've read so much of his content, seems like a good guy. It makes sense to go with him versus some other person I haven't consumed as much of their content. I'm trying to sort of extrapolate the the tactics you're using in you're essentially negotiating or using psychology before you even go to the negotiation table with your clients. What about more specifically, how do you convert them into clients? And then what does that dance around pricing and terms look like?
Yeah, great question, and it is true. I think that if you've spent a few months with me in my newsletter, or if you've listened to me, and I mean, I even had a CEO call me up the other day when I was outside scootering, watching my kids scooter, and he said like, "Oh, I just read your latest newsletter. I had to call you." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Like, how many pieces have you read?" He's like, "Oh, I've read like 5 newsletters." And he's like telling me, he's like quoting back the frameworks to me. And I was like, wow, this is really, really interesting. Like, not only has he seen it, but he's like learned something, and then he's teaching it back to me. And I'm like, that's amazing. So as far as structuring things go, when I started my business a few years ago, the number one thing that I heard from potential clients was like, I worked with this marketing agency, or I worked with this marketing consultant, and they just didn't produce anything. Like, it was a terrible, terrible experience. And they would go on these monologues for a long time. And finally I just had to stop them and just say like, okay, that's not me. I'm different than that. Like, let's kind of move beyond that. And so when I'm thinking about structuring, marketing agencies typically will give you 6 months, 12 months of like, okay, we're going to lock you in at these prices. And so I actually go against that and do a month to month with all of my clients. And, compared to some of these other agencies, I'm under their pricing as well. And the amount of content we're able to produce in a couple conversations per month is, based on what I've seen, is higher than a lot of these other competing agencies. And I think one more thing too, the reason why they are calling me is, yes, they have these established online relationships with me, and they see me, but also they realize that what we can do in repurposing is pretty flexible. I'm more available, I'm faster. And so all those factors kind of add up to, this is going to be a good situation for me.
On the note on a CEO calling you up and mentioning your last newsletter, I meet so many people randomly who are like, I read your newsletter, and they say that they don't engage with our LinkedIn posts because they don't want their employers to see that they're following a negotiation expert.
How to take more money from your employer. It's like no, not making that public.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, I wish you would engage, but I understand. And we had this issue with our testimonials. That luckily we have some incredible testimonials, but most of our like big win clients, they're C-suite, similar to your clients, and we help them make a lot more money, but they don't want to show that they they worked with the negotiations expert. On the pricing, I was curious because in a recent episode we talked about how, Alex, you mentioned that Alex went to Wharton Business School, and there he learned, what was the Warby example?
Yeah, how pricing can signal the perception of the quality of your work. So sometimes increasing your price will increase your sales because people think that you do better work or your product is better. And Warby Parker, the eyeglass company, it was founded by MBA students who were at Wharton Business School. And they had one of their professors as their advisor, and they brought their whole plan and everything to their professor and said, everything's perfect except one thing. Your glasses are too cheap. They're $45. No one will believe that $45 glasses are actually good quality. So double your price. So they launched their business with $90 glasses.
This was like when they first started. So $90 glasses was a lot back then. As well.
Yeah.
And then the sales went up.
Yeah. And so they had started the business, but the sales really skyrocketed after they changed it to doubling their eyeglasses price. So, but yeah, how do you think about pricing, and have you been in any sort of negotiations around that?
That was our free tip. You should double your prices so your sales go up. But I was curious, tying that to, you said you charge below the agencies. I think that definitely makes sense when you're sort of competing with more established agencies who have a whole team and all that. But how do you reconcile, or like what was your thinking around having a lower price?
Yeah, when I started, writing, I was taking on clients that wanted websites. I was taking on clients that wanted ads, all different types of things that I was basically just like, okay, I got to do what I got to do. And however we figure this out on a case by case basis, it probably took me a few years to realize, okay, no, that's not going to be great in making the kind of money that I think the business can make and just becoming known for something either. And so I spent some time just kind of sketching out what the ideal scenario would look like. And what I landed on is, okay, I did this at a previous startup, writing for the executive team, and I had a successful fundraise. And maybe what I really need to do is really focus on social media and allowing that to kind of transfer into these other assets and things that I create for the brand and for the C-suiters that work at that company. And so at the beginning, I was trying to just accommodate everybody, and I think that made for some rough months as I kind of ramped up the business and brought on more clients. But I'm now in a position where I have a couple different options for people. And I've had two really positive experiences in the last couple months where the CEO and the VP of marketing, they'll suggest something to the CEO and they say, hey, if we work with Morgan, we want to do this. And it's been one of the lower packages. And then it goes back to the CEO and they go, no, it's got to be this one. And so they see the value, and that comes with like how I present my scope and how I do some test content for them and other things like that. But it's been really cool for me as a writer and business owner to have my work validated at like even a higher level than what I thought or what the other person inside the business thought. And so that has kind of helped me change my mindset and also elevate the framing of how I present things too.
Okay, that was a long answer, non-answer, very diplomatic.
So Morgan, you present multiple packages. So if you get this and at different pricing tier, that made me think of something very interesting I saw recently around. No, it was around sales. Alex Hormozi, he's a big business, creator and puts out a lot of content. He was talking about when you price your service packaging, he said your smallest package, the cheapest one, you shouldn't call it like the cheap package or light package. He said you should call it the minimum package, because when you say minimum, it psychologically has someone accept that they've already decided that they're going to get it, but which amount am I going to get? Not should I get it or not. Like, so when you just say minimum package, it says, well, you've already decided, but you're going to get like this base minimum of offerings. And then the highest one is the super premium one. You price it so high that it kind of doesn't really make sense for someone to get it. And then and so you use that pricing to basically guide people towards the thing you want. But the biggest tip was just your lowest package, just call it your minimum package.
Yeah, I've heard this about restaurant menus, where they have one dish that is extremely expensive compared to everything else. That makes everything else look cheaper. I've seen it in wine menus as well. Great. Do you have any hot takes in negotiations, or how do you think about negotiations? It doesn't have to be any hot takes, but when you're thinking about pricing, and then let's say your clients are like, can we do less or whatever? Like, how do you approach that?
And even not about pricing, but I'm thinking in
scope too.
Yeah, in your line of work, when you are essentially negotiating with your clients on what the copy should be, if they think you should really take it in this one direction, but you think it should go in another. Like, have you ever had any tough problems to work through with your clients?
Yeah, and I just going back really fast, I didn't mean to skirt around anything, Gerda, around pricing. If you want to ask me, like if you want direct anything, I'll answer it.
I love it.
But I mean, there definitely, when you're working with the scope, and to your point, Alex, of like minimum versus this, that's the way that I think about it too, is like, okay, at foundation level, this is what you're getting. When we move into momentum, this is what you're getting. And then when we have this up here, it's an influence, and we're really going for it as fast as we can. And so that part of the process of having people come in and talk to me is like, it's kind of a workshop where we basically do an audit of what their digital presence looks like right now, where we would like it to be, and like big vision, big thinking, like what if we were able to do this, and this over here? Like, what would that mean to you? How would it change the perception of the brand value? What would it mean for your team and the opportunities that they get, like whether it's like sales enablement assets or other things that we're creating? So I think that is definitely a huge part of the work that I'm doing with teams is kind of, and sometimes the needs even change month over month, or like after 4 months, they kind of assess things and go, actually, we're going to need to do this direction. And we have some of those conversations at that point. But yeah, the scope at the very beginning is definitely looking at the current moment or the current opportunity ahead of that executive. And I just have one example from that that comes to mind is I had a CEO who has a pretty good following, but had not really published anything for a long time. Like, let's just call it 3 or 4 posts in the last few years. And he came into the conversation thinking like, okay, I want X number of posts. I want to post 2 or 3 times, and maybe we can do this and maybe we can do that. And wasn't really convinced one way or the other. But it wasn't until I started showing him like, okay, if we did 40 to 50,000 impressions per month on your content, and then we also did some long form articles, and then we also did some of this is kind of the world that you would then be living in. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, I get it. Like, I understand this. Like, and going back to my point of people always complaining about marketing agencies, and I think part of the reason was it wasn't that they were bad agencies or that they didn't like do what they said they were going to do. I don't know the story behind all these people that tend to talk to me about those experiences. It's just the expectation maybe was not really defined, but also the vision for what this could become and why they were deciding to invest into content and into the personal brands of these executives wasn't really painted well for them. And so I try to basically go present moment and then what is possible, and that kind of helps people understand everything.
I see. So when you work with clients, is it do you work on multiple channels? You help them with LinkedIn, but also fire up a newsletter, whether on Substack or Kit or whatnot. I'm curious,
Yes.
And this isn't necessarily about negotiation, but I just genuinely want your take because I feel like you're an expert in this. For LinkedIn, what type of content works in 2026? Because I feel like it's evolved over the years. In the past, I remember I was listening to this podcast, Greg Eisenberg, also another big business podcaster. He was sharing what works on LinkedIn is you put a picture of yourself, not polished, maybe it's almost like a selfie, and you post something that is essentially something very generic and something that everyone will agree to. Like, it's like I don't know, don't overwork yourself because there's more to life than just being in the office. And then like everyone's like, yeah, something that everyone agrees with. And I also then started seeing a lot of thought leadership pieces going out. Now it seems like I don't know, it's constantly evolving, but I'm curious your take on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a few tiers of content, and basically you have the lowest level tier. Think of it like the basement. You have, these are the product announcements. These are all the Googleable things, like 5 times your marketing, blah, blah, blah with this. And then you just kind of like copy and paste it. Middle tier, selfies. This is what I'm doing right now. This is, I got married. This is what it taught me about B2B sales, like all that stuff. That's
We actually
like, that's pretty,
had a post like that.
But it was more of a joke.
Yeah, we opened with like
It's like we celebrated our marriage.
Here's what we turned up with
That's
B2B
what it taught
SaaS.
us about B2B SaaS sales.
and then I said, JK,
Jake.
it's not that kind of post.
Yeah.
you should have committed to the bit full on. Yeah.
Point A, B, C. Let's go.
I was worried that my connections would take it seriously. It's like, oh, she's lost her marbles.
So then,
Yeah, so I
you have
would
that
say
tier,
that's
yeah.
I would say like that's pretty mid to upper tier as far as engagement goes. I in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of tech people come from X over to LinkedIn, and they're posting memes. They're doing some satire. They're doing some comedy. That like starts to get you into the upper tier. And I've for my personal content, I don't recommend this strategy to anybody else because it rubs some people the wrong way. But I've been basically mocking LinkedIn influencers and all the egomaniacs on LinkedIn that love to like take pictures in front of their Lamborghinis and stuff. And that type of content has done really well. I mean, I've almost done 30,000 impressions per post for 9 months. And so I have some that have done like 100 to 200,000 impressions several times. They're not all at 30, but yeah, really, really great engagement with funny content, or at least what I consider to be funny. It might not be as funny. It's probably just mildly like not really that funny, and people are just sort of laughing in pity.
Because it's LinkedIn, everyone else is so serious and dare I say boring. So,
So they're just begging for for anything. It's just
funnier in comparison.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. So, and I would say the best content that may not get you the huge numbers that you either aspire to or want to see out of your content is really like that expert level on a broad sense. Like, these are the things that I know to be true, but also you're able to niche down. I have one client in particular that doesn't post any personal takes or like anything outside of what he knows in his space. And he goes wide, and then he goes really, really narrow and like really deep on one thing. Then and to the point that I sometimes wonder, like, does anyone know what is like what he, because he's just so specialized. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know if this is gonna perform, but it does. Like it does so well. And so for 2026, I would say, like, don't feel the need to be a clown like I do. Like I think I take that a little bit too far sometimes, but don't feel the need to like stretch your personality more than you have to. Don't do things that are super personal if you don't want to. Like, just say like, how am I in the 1% or 0.1% of this thing, and what can I share about that? And just do that all the time. Like, don't mix anything up. Like, in order for you to successfully build your brand, you only have to be known for a couple things that you do better than anyone else. And just that consistency over time. You're not boring the audience. You may be boring yourself because you think about these things every moment of your life, but the rest of us out there in LinkedIn land, like, this is new to us. So just teach us about that one thing, and you'll do fantastic. You'll have some inbound. You'll have their visitors going up on your profile. Everything gets better when you really lead with the expert content.
It's like you read my mind, because we've had this conversation a lot with Alex, and for example, Alex will propose a post for me, and I'm like, we've talked about this like 10 times already, but it's true. We're thinking about it day in and day out, but the audience is not.
Yeah.
And then the other piece is that there are some studies that show that it takes us hearing or reading about something 7 times to truly absorb it and sort of accept it. And that's why we see ads like when I first moved to SF, I saw Instagram ads. I'm like, Instagram does not need ads. Everyone knows what Instagram is, but no, it's important to be out there and sort of have people sort of absorb the content and the brand. How do you think about, do you work with people who have a secret sauce, or that they're selling something? Like, for example, for us, we do negotiations consulting. So one question that is top of mind for us is whether to post not only the what to think about in negotiations, but also the how. But the how is our secret sauce. Like, that's literally what people pay us for. So how do you think about like what to share and how much to share, when to reveal your secret sauce, and all that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and probably easier for me than for you, maybe. I don't know, but for me, I think of everything as ungated in the sense that, like, I don't hide anything, because in one way, in a certain way, it's a very low leverage activity for a CEO to sit in front of a document and type like, oh, what am I going to make today? Right. And then they spend 15, 20, 25 hours a month. And so, like, if they value their time at $300, $400, $500 an hour, not a great use of their time to be thinking about those things. And so for me, I want to prove as much as I can that I am the world's greatest communicator, storyteller, ghostwriter, all of those things, because I want them to pass that part of their life off to me. And so I have no problem sharing everything that I've ever done. And pretty much I've done that on Substack for the last 3 years, writing an article every single week. And I don't really have anything to hide. The only thing that I would consider to be like my special sauce or my product is the way that I'm able to take all of these different pieces and pull them together, which is, frankly, pretty boring, I think. Like, I don't know if any CEO would want to hear that. Like, they don't really care about how I'm writing or the way that the process of it all. And maybe there will be a day where I offer that as some sort of product, but that's my secret sauce. And I don't get into those things because it's just not exciting. Like, they'd rather see pictures of Sydney Sweeney than that. Right?
No, I think you make a great point because there is the secret sauce part, and there's the what you call like passing it on to you, all their sort of writing and all that. For us, is we tell our clients like you're passing on all the negotiation, like strategy and research and everything and preparation, and you won't have to worry about any of it. We'll just handle it for you, or we'll tell you exactly what you need to do. So it's less about the secret sauce. And we have put a lot of secret sauce out there, and then people still either don't remember it, don't know how to implement it. They still need hand holding. And like one thing that's very interesting is I keep thinking about Ulysses, which is that Greek mythology fable. They're in a ship and they could hear the sirens singing, and if they go towards the voice, they drown. But they just need to be very strong and not go towards the voice. And I think of us as we are the sort of that tool that helps you not go towards the voice. So when you're negotiating, for example, with like recruiters or in a business deal, you can't help but you want to share numbers and you want to share your market data because we're so used to this way of negotiating. And there's the social pressure and there's the misconceptions out there, like the common knowledge that is actually misconceptions. As I think of us as like holding Ulysses back from following the seductive voice of the negotiation sirens so that they don't drown and not make much money in their deals. Yeah. So how do negotiations come up in your work, or how do you think about them, or power, other than what you already mentioned?
Outside of the creative process, I think that there's just a real partnership in how we work together, how we talk together, because sometimes it's hard when one side feels like either they've lived up to their side of the bargain or they have everything that they need to be successful, then the other group doesn't necessarily. And so I think one of the things that I do as you can correct me, but just making sure that from an expectation standpoint, communication standpoint, they know that they have someone that is going to go the distance with them. Like, this isn't just a fun project. This is their business. This is something that they cry about and they rejoice around and everything else. And so they need somebody that can help get them to their next destination, their next point of the business. And I've seen the difference between like engagements that sort of fall apart with clients in the past and ones that are doing really well right now is because of the fact that we have like a very active Slack channel together, or they feel comfortable enough texting me about things after dinner, even though it's outside of work hours, and like we have real relationships. And so I think there's some flavor or some version of negotiation there. I don't know how to quantify it exactly, but just making sure that, hey, we're not only are we on the right page, but we're progressing together. Like, this makes sense for everything that was promised at the beginning. In the middle of it right now, it's awesome. And then at the end of this, whenever that happens, you're going to be so happy you worked with me. And I think that just comes through those daily touch points, interactions, and communicating back and forth.
Yeah, it sounds like you don't think of negotiations, or you frame them, instead of me versus them, into we're a team and we both want the same thing, which is your success, because when you succeed, I succeed. I love that framing, and that's how we think about it too. We always talk about thinking about how to get a win-win. I want the other party to win too. I want them to be happy in having worked with us or negotiated with us. How do we expand the pie instead of kind of fight how to split the pie? We expand it and we both get a bigger chunk of the pie. So yeah, love that mindset. Any final thoughts?
And just given your area of expertise, I keep coming back to the content piece. For those who are trying to grow their LinkedIn or their audience, what are some important things for them to keep in mind? Just your top 2-3 tips there.
Yeah, I would say ideas are everywhere. So if voice notes are the best for you, or just like your notes app or someplace that you can capture things, make that a daily habit. And I think the easiest thing is when you're done with your day, get out your phone. I mean, I know I'm a nerd and I still work with these things called notepads, but I mean, I just jot. What is this notepad? I just take down a few things. It's like, this is what I accomplished today. This is what I was thinking about. This is what I was worried about. These are the people I talked to. And then I think, like, was there something there? And if we had more time, I would show you the notes app that I have in my phone. I already have my entire year planned out of content, just all these ideas that are sitting there, because all, I mean, what I do is I'm a little bit of a nutty professor this way, I guess. Like, I see something like, oh, that could be good, and then I'm writing about it, taking a note, making, like, talking to myself about it, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's going to be a great piece of content. So ideas are everywhere. So even though you might feel like weird because you're like, oh, do I have to turn everything in my life into content? Well, no, but like, just basically keep like a mini journal or something like that and make that an exercise. And then as far as the second thing goes, I would say just be social. And I know that this seems like, oh, that's so stupid to say that, but if you're on a social media platform, just be social. Like, go through every single day for a few minutes, find partners, find investors, find whoever your top 5 to 10 people are, and leave something significant there beyond rocket emoji or thumbs up, and just say, like, oh, that, like, basically extend the post with your own thoughts. Like, and that can be 2 sentences, that can be just, 4 or 5 sentences, whatever the length is, but say something significant there. And like, don't be afraid to even kind of spread the goodwill and karma, and shoot people a DM and say, like, what you said on this was amazing and I loved it and it was so great. And some people just get weirded out by that. And I've even I've even had people that respond back to me when I shoot them DMs. They're like, no one has ever complimented me before about something I've said on the internet.
Aw.
And I'm like, oh, well, I do that like every day for everybody. And so yeah, I mean, you can win some friends, but I mean, just think about like what that means as you compound out over time. Is you have all these people that know that you care and that they're, you're rooting for them, and in return they will come back to you and they'll say, oh, you got to talk to this person, or they'll set you up with people, whatever. So I would say those two things, and that will put you ahead of the majority of the people that are on LinkedIn.
I really like your last tip. Just be social. You would think that on being on a social media platform, we would be, but maybe it's become such a culture of consumption and just lurking and perception of how we appear. But yeah, just give a little bit of value. And I really like your concept of how that compounds over time. And yeah, that's great.
Great. We can wrap it up here. Any final thoughts?
I'm very, very grateful that we could have this conversation. And part of my mission is to get more and more people to use these things the way that they're supposed to be used, and building those relationships, which, like, sometimes we stop at posting things and then we're like, oh, I did it. Okay, I can go back and check it off my list now because I just did this thing. But it really is about that human connection and saying, either saying hi to someone or talking to someone. And so, yeah, just glad we could have this combo.
Yeah, likewise.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Morgan.
Thank you, Morgan.
Yeah, and we will see everybody on the next episode of Gentle Power.
Yeah, bye.